Okay, so some of you know me, some of you don't. I've been doing a channel for the last almost 4 years that started off being a 64 related channel, hence why the 64's hooked up for capture there in that screen, but it's sort of evolved general 8-bit stuff. Why I got invited is sort of weird, but we'll sort of cover really what happens for me. Why I started doing this was, it also off a friend of mine who I knew from indie games dev, which is many things I'm involved with. And he started doing videos about some of his old childhood games. He grew up with an Apple II, and a bunch of those games he enjoyed playing, and he'd hit some hit the wall for his own game development projects. And so he was revisiting these games, really talk about the design and stuff. As it so happened, one time he did a video on Skyfox, which is one of those absolute games I loved on the 64 as a kid. And so we were talking a bit further, and it's like, I need to start doing this. And so I did, and I started doing it. Originally it was on emulator, and I've been doing it for I just churned them out, did it kind of on an emulator as sort of a thing, and people seemed to take to it like a duck to water. People seemed to enjoy what I was doing. And really, at the time, it was sort of like a bunch of games I enjoyed as a kid, kind of looking at design stuff, because again, this was me sort of outgrowing this indie game development thing. But as it sort of went on, people kind of got into it, and part of it was expanding to doing it on real hardware, which is a good challenge in itself, let's just say that. And expanding to real hardware meant, dramatic improvement in capturing, but it also meant I could start covering more machines. Some, of course, wearing the lovely chicken beak badge, others not so much, and more, being the last thing I've just added, the Apple II. So as it stands right now, I've done stuff on the 64, the Plus 4, the Spectrum, the Atari 8-bits, the Amiga, the MSX, and the Apple II. I've got a bunch of other machines that I haven't kind of got my flow working for because they do weird things with audio, and a couple more incoming. But one of the big things really is, it's like I said, started off in this design and thing, but it's sort of gotten to a bit of preservation because a lot of retro gaming content out there online is typically by Yanks, and so it focuses on console gaming, which is fine. It's important, it's cool, but I think everyone's heard enough of Mario and Zelda, which are great games. I quite enjoy them, but everyone's heard enough about them several times. And a good example is Morpheus here, because let's face it, it's a game that not many people took the time to learn because they pirated it as a kid, and so it gets a lot of slack and a lot of, it's crap, when actually it's a really involved game with a lot of cool stuff to it. And the thing is that a lot of good content really is about being able to understand how to play those games, because that's actually part of what makes preservation important. Because at the end of the day, you can learn that how this game works, why it was very interesting, and things like that. I mean, and it's something I've been doing for 4 years. It's a lot of work. I mean, that's me doing that was a review of First Samurai, which is one of those games that was fairly late and had a whole, slight interesting history about how it came to the 64, because it was slated for release. The publisher collapsed, being Mirasoft. It was Imageworks, which was Mirasoft, and all of that. And it came out a year later and really sunk, because by that point people had moved on. And it's a lot of work. I do a weekly schedule, and that can be a hectic, crazy bit of work sometimes, especially when rushing to get to completion. And I still enjoy it. It's a good challenge, because doing it, communicating this stuff, for me, I've made a lot of friends who in enjoying old games. I don't think I would be here tonight if it wasn't for this and the friends I've made through doing it. A lot of my work right now, sort of, I think about the future of the channel and the stuff I want to do. Like, I've done 230 odd episodes as I've got this across, all those machines I talked about previously. And, my efforts really of late have been working on just improving the capture gear. This is sort of half of the setup here that I've replicated. The capture end is, the machines go to an upscaler goes to a game capture card, which goes to my laptop. But in terms of stuff I'm interested in the future, I've been starting to do some hardware reviews. I'm looking forward to finally cracking open that Magic Voice. I've had that sitting there for a while, because a lot of people haven't really shown that experience properly of how that actually sounds, and it's really important to do that. And of course, other esoteric things. But there's also really wanting to do a lot more depth. Pardon? There's a lot more in-depth stuff I want to do. Like, I think a lot of retro gaming content focuses on very short form, like, here's this game. But with a game like Bar Tale, a game like Metal Gear 2 on the MSX, there's so much more to them that can't really be conveyed in a very short, concise video. There's a lot of editing, a lot of structure that really puts together why these games are interesting, why they're important. A lot of the games I've been interested in collecting have been a little more longer form, and so being able to reflect that on the channel is something that's very important. And then there's, of course, preservation, because let's face it, it is really bloody important. And being able to do things like use a cryoflux or the tape dumping capabilities of an Ultimate or whatever other device are out there is really more important for this as well. And if people can do that and find their old treasure troves of things they hacked together as kids when they were toying around with BASIC, then I think that's part of this widening of this culture. There's a lot more to preservation, more, like I said, more than just about being able to play a game and understand how it works, but also about all these other little factors and hopefully getting more people introduced to the hobby. I mean, from what I've been told tonight, was the biggest turnout here from everyone, and it's really cool to see the people getting involved and enjoying old games, because old games are cool, at least the good ones. So I'm gonna say I have some flyers back here, which for the channel. If you want to go sub, I usually put out a video on Friday. It's whether it's a sort of let's play-y, I sit back and play a thing, capturing, or I do a more scripted, edited, polished up review. There's a lot of things that come together with that, and I have a mostly European viewer base, so that's why Friday night works. And of course, it's one of those things that does take a lot of work, and if you enjoy it, there is a little Patreon page I run which lets me fund it. It helps, putting towards gear investment and things, and the stuff is so niche that ads don't work. I think that's sort of the bulk of it, and really, questions? I think it's kind of late, and I think I could press a lot of this down because it's getting late, so... So yeah, anyone got questions?
How long does it take to put an episode together?
How long it takes to put an episode together? If I'm doing a straight gameplay, maybe about 3 to 4 hours. It's the kind of thing where it's like an hour or so of research, which is me playing the game, whether on hardware or on emulate, just putting notes together, right? My format is like a bit of background about the game, how the story, the basic gameplay, what it involves, kind of things I like and dislike about it. Because I always think that angle is sort of like this sort of review format. But if we're talking a bigger review, that could take ages. One of the reviews I did recently was the original MSX Metal Gear, and also compared it with the C64 version, because no one ever really talks about that. They talk Metal Gear, they tend to talk about that horrible NES conversion. But the 64 version is interesting because it's based off that, and it's even worse. And that took a ridiculous amount of time, because I played the whole game through on the MSX, which is, a good 7 or 8 hours. And, another hour or so trying to play the 64 version, writing a script, editing the whole thing together, making it, look decent and polished. There's a lot of work in there. It's one of those crazy hobbies that can really eat your life if you're not careful. Anyone else?
Yeah, the games that you reviewed, any of the choices to review based on what you've got? Because
so it's... Part of it is, I don't really take requests so much. Part of the thing for me is, if people mention a game, I'll try and hunt it down. Sometimes, it's a game's a little harder to find. And it's also like, there are games that I've wanted to cover that, quite frankly, I'm really bad at. For ages, I've been wanting to do Myth, because I got the cartridge, the version not too long ago, and that actually has some interesting differences against the original tape disc release. But I still can't beat the first stage properly. Yeah, but I part of the thing I like to do is also sort of, as part of this preservation aspect, is show the experience as close to what you get if you bought the original game, right? So I try to use original disc tape dumps if I don't use the physical disc or tape to load. And I think that showing that experience where the gameplay is busted, because if you play a game with Trainer, there's not really much value in it. It's really just sitting there, breathing. You don't experience that whole thing. Like, another game I want to do would be Fifth Gear, the little budget racer that Houston's budget label Racket put out. I used to play that as a kid with trainers, and then I started playing it properly when I got a hold of it. And it's just like, it's ridiculously brutal and not very fun. And it's like, it's one thing to play a game with trainers and breeze through and enjoy it, but it doesn't quite show the experience properly. And that's sort of the big thing that I really care about with how I produce stuff.
Games which have depth to them. The C64 games standards because we've got games with a lot of depth.
Okay, so games with a lot of depth. So first case is any decent RPG or adventure, hence why I threw up Bard's Tale. Like any of those RPGs, like your Ultimas, your Wizardries, the SSI Gold Box games, they're always going to have it. You know, you've got a lot of mechanics in there with managing your party and balancing it. Morpheus is a great example of it. You think it's just a straightforward shooter, but there's a lot of depth with its life cycles, its ship upgrade mechanic, things like that. Elite is always a perfect example, you know, having to know about your trade routes and your ship configuration and plan for things like that. Arctic Fox, which probably, I don't know how well known that is, tank game by Dynamics published by EA, sort of that same kind of thing where you need to strategically plan how you, the concept of the game is you are a lone tank dropped into the Arctic and you've got to hunt down an enemy base and they're just hounding you. You have to take out targets to lower the condition. You have abilities like to dig into the snow. So you've got to work out how to hide when stuff's coming. It's a very interesting game like that. Any flight simulator, anything with microprose written on the box. That's sort of a lot of stuff. It's funny, a lot of that stuff really feels like it came out of America, and a lot of retro computer content online doesn't really focus on stuff coming out of America. Australia is really interesting because we actually got both. We got all the cool stuff from America. We have lots of disk drives, which the UK doesn't, and the UK view then gets shut, is reflective of budget like Mastertronic and whatnot. And it's like, there's so much more of the C64 than that, and I'm hoping that the stuff I show here lets people get a little more interested in some of that. I know a few people have said have really wanted to hunt games down. Ant was telling me he wants to hunt down Demon Stalkers after I covered that a while ago. And Demon Stalkers is another one that's like, it's a Gauntlet clone, but it adds a bit more to it, and its own follow-up, Fire King adds even more, and it's sort of like a proto-action RPG.
For a living channel, have you reviewed Pirates?
I don't have a copy of it. It's on my list. I want to get a hold of it. I haven't had much luck. There's a list. Pirates is definitely there. I'd love to. Cool.
Is there a holy grail to your collection that you have or are hoping to get your hands on?
Ooh.
Hardware or game?
Okay, so one of my ultimate grails was to get what I consider the sort of last 3 C64 commercial games following the UK scene. So that's Lemmings, Mayhem in Monsterland, and Alien 3. I have the first two. I've never seen Alien 3 come up. I've seen someone have an actual copy, but I've never seen it on auction. That's sort of a big one. Hardware-wise, for a while it was an MSX. I wanted to get an MSX2, which I got late last year. And it's just like the MSX, again, the MSX2 in particular, a lot of the great games on it came out of Japan on cartridge, really bleeding expensive. But there are some really good games there, and it's like, it's an 8-bit machine, but it's just got so much stuff on it that's like, wow, it's quite a big step compared to other 8-bit platforms, really. Yeah.
What system did you grow up with?
C64.
Oh, okay.
C64 was what I started on. It's the one I've got the most fondness for. The number 2 that I was exposed to was the Amiga. I had cousins with an A500. And I remember a lot of games on there, a lot of good ones. But coming back, a lot of those early ones tended to not be so good. And then, of course, in primary school, we had Apple IIs. That's why I worked to get one of those more recently. Like the newest machine I've added at this current time.
Do you do any console games as well?
No, the channel is pretty much retro computing. There's enough people doing it, and because I didn't really grow up with that stuff, it's really hard to be able to offer a really good opinion, like something really informed. Like, I know there's a lot of really cool console games that I'd collect if I was going to, but like, they tended to treat PAL regions like trash. Like, you know, there's officially 700 games, officially licensed games from the NES. PAL region's got 200. It's that kind of attitude that turned me off a lot of console stuff until more recent years, in all honesty. It just doesn't excite me. Like, whereas retro computers, it's like, we can get stuff from America, we can get stuff from Europe, in the case of the MSX, we can get stuff from Japan. And so you get a lot more variety in games. You know, from solo bedroom coders to big game development studios.
Nintendo's Donkey Kong. Were you aware that there's 2 different versions for the C64?
made by two different developers. First one was made by Atari Soft, and the second one by Ocean.
There's a third.
There's a third.
Came out last year. It was produced by a demo group called Oxyron.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, as a kid, I played the Atari Soft version. That's the version I had access to. I only found out about the Ocean version in recent years when I got into sort of collecting and stuff. I don't have a copy of either. Mario Brothers was the same, though technically the Atari Soft version wasn't released. I think it was when the video game crash happened and Atari killed Atari Soft off, and it got out there. It's surprising when you learn things like that about the library.
There were a number of games that were produced independently in parallel.
Yeah.
Like in the US, like Street Fighter was one of them.
Double Dragon, one of those.
Yeah.
Double Dragon was not quite the same as that, because it was originally the Virgin Mastertronic release, written in 6 weeks, because the original development team couldn't do it. Interesting story about that. And then I don't know how Ocean got the rights to redo it later, but it was both. Like the Ocean one came out, was only available to buy at one computer show, so it's one of the rarest 64 games out there. The parallel stuff is very interesting. The case of Flying Shark and Sky Shark, which is what it's known as in the US, is the most interesting. The UK one was developed and released. They went to import it into the States. Taito, we're going to publish it in the States, and they weren't really happy with it. So they basically commissioned Software Creations, because on the strength of the Bubble Bobble, they wrote a brand new version. Sky Shark is actually a much better game as a result, and it's probably worth tracking down. There's a good version by Nostalgia if you're into cracks, and I don't think it's that hard to find a proper copy online. I actually managed to find a seal in the folio album style a while ago. Pretty good game. But yeah, there's a lot of that stuff that's interesting with the different releases between the UK and America. And Street Fighter, of course, is interesting because they released it once, they stuck both versions. So you get one side of the tape is the UK one, the other side's the US one. Both still terrible though. I don't know which one's least worse.
One more? Yeah, Rob, you're talking about like the end of the commercial scene in the UK with Lemmings and Mayhem and Monsterland. So that kind of era, what was the best example of a C64 game out of that UK commercial scene around about 1992, 1993?
That really shows what the machine can do.
Yeah.
It's got to be Mayhem, in all seriousness. The tricks that Apex put together to make Mayhem work are amazing. There's that scrolling on. Can't think of any 64 games that can scroll anywhere near as fast as Mayhem does. And they really, really push the colour blending. I remember playing the demos as a kid, lusting over a copy, and all I had was those demos that were sitting on Commodore format cassettes of 3 levels, and it's just like, wow, I never thought I'd ever get a copy, and then so I tried to republish it, which is amazing. So yeah, thank you all so very much. It's been a good, I had really good success in August actually with some stuff because it's C64 month, celebration of the best micro, and Charles been doing really well, and yeah, do check it out. I've got little flyers I had from there on the back of a game project I'm working on that's not C64. If you want to check the channel out, hit a subscribe. I love hearing people. It's a good way to talk about this stuff with people. Just talk about these games, why they're interesting, why they're good. Because even a crap game, a few months ago I looked at a game called Desert Hawk, which is a game released by players on budget that wants to be Choplifter, but it's horrible. And when looking at it, it's like, I'm just looking at why this game is horrible. All these little things, they wanted to try and outdo Choplifter, but it failed on so many levels. And it was such an interesting game to sit down and play. It's like, oh, this is busted. Oh, this is horrible. This control mechanic, this thing. They're just all the little bugs of that game coming together. It's just like, yeah, it's interesting to see why a terrible game is terrible. Don't just say, oh, it's crap. That's sort of, that whole comic thing, for me, kind of bores me. I don't know, I like watching stuff like some of those more comic reviewers when I was younger, but after a while it's like, I'm actually interested in a lot more of this stuff. I'm interested in seeing a lot more depth, and it's something that I hope I provide with how I run the channel.
Thanks, Rob.